Today we're talking about something that you can use to improve either your solos that you're improvising or writing, or just to improve the melodies that you're writing. Hey, I'm Isaac Schanno Johnson. If you don't know me, I'm a musician, composer, producer, and I make videos about all that fun stuff: music composition, music production. So make sure you hit that subscribe button to see videos like this in the future. Okay, so guide tones. What are guide tones? Guide tones are the color notes, sort of a chord. They tell you the chord quality that you might be hearing. So that means they're the third and the seventh, whether that's a major third or minor third, major seventh, or a flat seven, or a diminished seven. Doesn't matter what it is. Those different chord tones are what will give you the color in a specific chord. So if we take a look at a couple examples of chords, let's start with a major seven. C major seven, easy, white keys, right? C, E, G, B. The third would be E, that's a major third, and the seventh would be B, that's a major seventh. So if we take a look at a C dominant seven, or just C7, that's C, E, G, and B flat. Now, B flat is a different note than the previous one, so that means that seventh scale degree is the only thing that changes a C major seven to a C dominant seven. Guide tones. They're guiding you to sort of tell you what chord quality you're hearing. Now, if we go to a C minor 7, that's C, E flat, G, B flat. Again, the third and the seventh are the things that changed. The root and the fifth, for now, have stayed the same. E flat versus E, it's a minor third in the C minor 7 chord, and B flat versus B, minor seventh in the minor 7 chord. Now, you could go another step further and change the fifth to make it a C minor 7 flat 5 or C half diminished 7, but let's just stick with those first three: major 7, dominant 7, and minor 7 for now. What do I mean by you can use this in solos or melodies? Well, if you want to make a solo melody, whatever it is, that sort of outlines the chords and guides the listener and plays with the different chord tones, use these notes. Basically just play them, right? In your solo at some point over that chord, you play the guide tones. Now, if we start with this just super basic, we're literally just playing guide tones. It doesn't sound all that interesting of a solo or of a melody, but this is an example that we could use. All we're doing, we're taking a 2-5 in C major, and we're playing the guide tones over it, right? So when I say 2-5, that means if we assign the different chords in a major scale different numbers. So 1 is the first chord, or the chord, the triad or seventh chord built off of the first scale degree. That's C major, that's 1. We continue that. The next note is D. That makes a D minor 7 chord. That would be the 2 chord, and then E minor 7 would be 3, 4 major 7 would be F major 7, G dominant 7 would be 5. If you want to learn a little bit more about Roman numeral analysis, which is what that is, I got another video on that. Go check that one out. But for now, that's the basics we're going to get through. Okay, so we got a 2-5 in C major. Those are our guide tones. That's what we're playing. So far, not an interesting melody. What can we do to make this a little more interesting? Well, we can add some rhythm to it. Keep the notes the same. Don't play anything else but guide tones. Add some rhythm. Again, not going to be super interesting, but here's an example of what that might sound like. Okay, now we've got rhythms, we've got chord tones, all the good stuff, right? How do we actually make it sound a little bit more like a solo? Well, we can either add other chord tones, like the fifth or the root, or if we really want to get fancy and colorful, we could add a ninth or a 13th or something, or we could add scale degrees. Let's take a look at an example of what that might be. Let's add some extra chord tones in there, maybe add a fifth, a ninth or something, see what that could sound like. So we've got sort of an idea of how we can make a solo using guide tones. You start with the really basic stuff. You don't have to start with half notes on this, but I like to start with half notes, and you play both guide tones just to give yourself sort of some practice playing both of the guide tones over the chords, right? Then you can mess around with it. You don't need to play both. You can just focus on one if you want to, but it's a good way to start getting used to what this sounds like and what this feels like over the chords. Now we've got guide tones with some extra added chord tones, extra added flavor. So that's the basic idea, is start with the guide tones, add a rhythm, add some other chord tones, right? Another step, which you can do if you want to, I'm not going to give an example here, but you could add another step where you change some of the guide tones to tensions, or switch out, play around with alternating between guide tones and tensions. You could do that if you want to, but let's see if we can take another example and add some like extra flavor into it, just by adding some, grace notes and articulations to make it sound a little bit more musical. So let's go back to our example we had before with guide tones and extra chord tones. Now let's see if we can add some extra notes to it, just for some extra flavor to make it a little bit more interesting. Now what I'm adding here is mostly going to be like other like blues notes, for example, or other grace notes, just to make it a little bit more interesting. I might put in maybe a chromatic enclosure or something. Let's see. All right, what are some ways that we can sort of use this in an actual setting when we're practicing? Well, I'm going to talk about this as if you're trying to solo over a jazz standard, because that's mainly how I've taught this to my students and how I mainly learned this idea, but you can also take this idea and use it over, a song that you're writing if you want to. So take the song that you're using, play a chorus where you just play guide tones. I'd play a couple, maybe 3 or 4, right? Practice it so you really know it, right? You want to be able to feel really comfortable playing just the guide tones, either whole notes or half notes. Maybe play quarter notes, just alternating if you want to. Don't really have to. Just do that. Then you take the same step that we just did, add some extra rhythms to that, right? Try and make an interesting solo with just guide tones. Once you get here, this might be a little difficult because remember, you're only playing 2 notes over each chord, right? So you have to remember all the guide tones and where they are. That's why you want to practice that first, and then try and make an interesting rhythm, right? You don't have to play each guide tone for each chord, right? If you can think of a rhythm that's interesting and it sort of flows to go straight into the next chord without playing the second guide tone, just do that, right? And then once you're comfortable with that, just playing guide tones and an interesting rhythm, then you add in some other chord tones, right? But this is going to be a slow process, right? You're going to play this head, 12 times doing this, right? 4 times just guide tones, 4 times just playing a rhythm with them, 4 times making something else. And then after that, once you get to the part where you're adding chord tones and guide tones together, sort of, you can play it a whole bunch of times and you're playing a whole lot more interesting stuff. But that's the last step, is then you use that, try and make it more interesting, right? If you want to add a 4th step to that, it's play a solo that you think is interesting and meaningful and expresses some musical idea that you want to express over the song. All right, that's it for this video. Hope you found it useful. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something about music. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and as always, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.